welcome to JAX London. I'm here with Graham and Kate. Hi, how was your session?
Went well, I think. Yeah, we had a really full room, which we were really pleased about.
Yeah, it's really good, and some good questions afterwards as well.
And people loved it, so I've heard. So my question is, people don't really take Java EE into consideration when creating Java microservices. Why is that?
I think it's largely historical in that Java EE, it's quite an old technology, or first started around the end of the 1990s and evolved over time. And vendors' implementations evolved over time and grew. And so there was more and more technology put into those implementations, and they became large distributions, and the kind of EE as a platform specification didn't really help in terms of tailoring those for different kinds of deployments. And as microservices came along, there's a need for different runtime characteristics, so fast start, fast stop, only including in your runtime what you need for your application. And I don't think people have kind of really noticed that EE vendors have kind of changed what they provide. So 5 years ago we created WebSphere Liberty, which let you start with just a small kernel and then add the individual EE capabilities in, so you could build a custom runtime to suit your needs. And we contributed that into open source, and now you can start, for example, with just a server that has web container capabilities and it's 15.5 megabytes. It starts in a few seconds, or you can grow all the way up to a full EE implementation along with MicroProfile, and that's 76 megabytes. So I think the runtime's changed a few years ago, but I don't think people have kind of noticed that change. They're kind of maybe using older versions and kind of don't see that it's actually, you need to think about EE as capabilities rather than a platform.
Yeah. And what are its benefits? What benefits does it bring to a microservices architecture?
So EE in itself has some nice kind of foundational technologies for doing microservices. So you've got things like JAXRS, so you can do REST APIs. There's JAXRS client that came in the second version of JAXRS. There's CDI for doing component model things. There's things for processing JSON and so on. So these are all good foundational technologies for doing microservices.
I think the other thing you get as well is from the vendors. So not only do you have technologies in Java EE that are suited, but as Graham said, a lot of the application servers that support Java EE also provide things like the fast startup, quick shutdown, that then also help with microservices as well.
Yeah.
Thank you. And there's a lot happening in the Java EE world right now, with the Java EE 8 being recently released. Yeah. What are your favorite features or feature?
So there are a few good things coming in Java EE 8. So HTTP2 support, for example, which lets you push content back to a client, so back to a browser before the browser even realizes it's going to need the content. So you, as the kind of provider of the content back, you'll often know there are other resources, other things that the browser's going to want to fetch, like images and so on. You can now push those back with HTTP2. Things like JSON-B, so we've now got a JSON binding to make it easier to write REST services using JSON. JAXRS, the latest update to JAXRS with its server-sent events support enables new kind of interaction patterns with REST services as well. So there are a bunch of things. I don't think I've really got a particular favourite, but there are quite a few things that I think people are going to find useful.
And are there perhaps some features that you would have liked to see in Java EE 8 but were not included?
Maybe not specifically an individual feature, but I think it would have been nice if EE 8 was EE was evolving more rapidly. So this was why kind of MicroProfile was created. So I guess what's missing is some of the more advanced capabilities. We've got the kind of core foundational capabilities in EE for writing microservices. But once you get seriously into microservices and in terms of deployments and networks are involved and you're trying to scale these things out, then I think you need other capabilities. And those are the sorts of things that we felt EE wasn't necessarily moving quickly enough, and so have been done elsewhere.
And well, Java EE was recently moved to it has taken its first steps towards being moved to the Eclipse Foundation. So what are the benefits of an open source Java EE?
Well, so one of the benefits is being able to enable more collaboration. So now that it's moving towards open source, we can have collaboration from individuals, not just from sort of larger companies. And hopefully with that, that will then enable us to have Java EE progress more rapidly and bring in some of the features that Graham was saying that we haven't quite got yet in Java EE 8, bring them more rapidly in the future.
Yeah. And with EE4J, it's not just about open source. So although Eclipse is historically known for open source technologies, it's going to evolve to become an organisation that can handle specifications and all the IP things involved in that. And I think specifications are important, but then because then vendors can do individual implementations, and those implementations differ and kind of focus on different characteristics. That means customers have more choice. So.
And what do you think of the name? I know for a fact that some people don't like Eclipse being part of the name. So are you okay with it?
Naming is always hard. You'll never be able to make everyone happy with a name. So.
True. And now obviously EE4J and Eclipse MicroProfile will have to coexist under the same roof. So should they be merged? Do you think they should be merged?
I think that decision really comes down to the community involved. Obviously they'll spend a bit of time before EE4J is kind of established in Eclipse, and then when we get to that point it will just depend on what seems like the best move for the community and how they can collaborate together in the best way.
Yeah. So we have MicroProfile as an established project with the community participating. I think there's going to be a lot of overlap between the two communities, so MicroProfile and EE4J. We need, as Kate said, EE4J to become established, and then I think it's up to the communities of the two projects to decide what the right relationship is over time. It could be that MicroProfile remains a ground for new technologies, and the more established technologies remain in EE4J, and maybe technologies move from MicroProfile into EE4J. Yeah.
But does it still make sense to have Eclipse MicroProfile now that Java EE4J is under the stewardship of the Eclipse Foundation?
Yeah, I think so. In terms of EE4J, obviously the move has been fairly recent, and we'll still see improvements, I'm sure, and new stuff coming out in MicroProfile before it comes to the decision of what happens with them working together. So I'm sure we'll see things moving forwards, and then we'll just have to see what the future holds for MicroProfile.
I think it makes sense to think of MicroProfile as two things. There's one which is the project, the collaboration, and then there's MicroProfile as the technology set. And I think the technology set will continue to make sense irrespective of how the project relate over time. So you could imagine if MicroProfile moved under EE4J, it would still remain as a technology set that's kind of focused on microservices for enterprise Java.
And last but not least, what's next for MicroProfile? I mean, for this year, for example, the next milestone 2.0?
I'm not sure what exact features we've got set out. I know that they've been bringing out quite a few over the last few months, so I'm excited to see what gets brought out next.
Yeah. So there are a couple of that I remember. So there's open tracing, so helping you trace requests as they go through a series of microservice invocations. There's open API discussions at the moment. It's very early days for those, so you can then produce an API definition similar to, so open API is a kind of follow-on specific standardization of Swagger for interop between microservices. And then there'll be kind of revs of the Java EE technologies. So at the moment, MicroProfile references 3 EE7 technologies, and now those have been updated in EE8, a new version. We'd expect to maybe reference the later versions.
I see. Thank you for the interview, and have a great conference.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.